This is Providence Television International, the game changer.
Welcome to the newspaper analysis on Providence Television International. I am Ugbebo Ikikwa. We meet to analyze the papers. Today is Dr. Emmanuel Egariba. You're welcome.
Well, nice to have you again. We have just come back from the Easter break, and I want to let the viewers know that we love them so much. We stayed with them throughout the celebration, and I'm happy that they had a wonderful, swell time. But there's some bad news, which we'll talk about very shortly.
Yeah, for the Catholic faithful, well, not just the Catholic faithful, for those who have come to actually love him because of his humility, his kind of person, Pope Francis is dead. He died Monday 21st at 7:35 a.m.
Yes, that's the pontiff bidding farewell after a wonderful service, after a wonderful mandate. We really do miss him. For me, it's a great personal loss because I loved him. Not just because he was a Catholic pontiff, but because he was a wonderful religious leader, loved by most people around the world, regardless of their religious inclinations. He was a friend of the poor, as you can see in that image there. He loved children, he loved the poor, and that's why he was called a People's Pope. Yes, it was a great thing. He was the People's Pope, and he lived by that. He just loved people. He showed it in many circumstances, and he was a very liberal Pope, very liberal indeed. He crossed barriers. For instance, he was the first Jesuit priest or Pope, okay? And he came all the way from Argentina. He even said it himself when he was ascending the office, that he was coming from the other end of the world. And people didn't quite know the meaning of that. He was coming from a place that was not even considered in the first place, Argentina, back in South America. Right? So, but he became the pontiff. And who is the pontiff? The vicar of Christ, the leader of Christendom, then of course the Bishop of Rome. Right. So, but he was just a spectacular human being. He took after Pope John Paul II. They were probably on the same platform. It's the saints now, by the way. They had the same orientation, okay? A little bit different from Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Benedict was more of a conservative, but remember he retired. He didn't die in office, but he retired, and he was the immediate predecessor. So Pope Francis came on board, and he was just wonderful. He was just wonderful. He ascended the office at the age of 76. That's 12 years. Yes, that was the picture. All right. So that's when he was a priest, by the way. And interestingly, we talked about this. I mean, a lot of people around the world talked about elderly leadership for the church. He was 76 when he became pope, and many people thought, oh, he could just have been a much younger person, so that the papacy would be a longer period. But you can't decide for the Holy Spirit, okay? The Holy Spirit decides, and why are we not to obey? But that's the situation we found ourselves in. We must pray for him, for God to give him a wonderful repose in the heavenly place. He was spectacular. Spectacular because he was a man of peace. And he was a prayerful pontiff, very prayerful, as you can see in that image there. He prayed till the last moment. He prayed for the peace of the world, even on Easter Sunday. And look at it now. He died close to resurrection, right? He could just have died on Resurrection Day. That would have been more glorious, actually. But the day after, he passed on, and we believe very strongly that God will rest him peacefully in the heavenly place.
Quite some sad news there. As the game changer, Providence Television International will keep you updated as events.
Well, I also want to talk about certain traits that he exhibited. He was a very humble man, very humble religious leader. I remember at the time, I think he traveled to somewhere in Europe, and he was coming back to the Vatican. He went into the economy class on the airplane, That was the picture there. He always loved to be with the people. He never alienated himself from the people. Always wanting to be in the midst of the people. Some other leader who could just have been going into first class. No, he carried even his bag, his small bag himself.
Yeah.
Not with any assistance from any aid as such. He carried it himself. It was just a humble leader, almost humble to a fault. Okay, and he believed in inter-religious cooperation. He was in the midst of Muslims. He was in the midst of Jews. Again, we can see that he prayed with them. For instance, he had wonderful and warm handshake with other religious leaders, and that's the other gentleman is from Iran. Okay, so but he built cooperation, and that is the lesson we must all learn. Yes, this is a Christian, this is a Jew, this is a Muslim. At the end of the day, are we not serving one God? And I think that's the lesson that the Pope wanted all of us to learn. No, he did not discriminate. He went around to see Muslim leaders, to see Jewish leaders. He went all around. And what was he preaching? Peace.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, peace all the way till he died. He talked peace, he preached peace. Yes, all through the period. And we must give kudos to him. And I'm sure that the burial will be synonymous with that of Pope John Paul II. Exactly. The whole world was united in giving him wonderful tributes.
Anytime you think of Pope Francis, the other pope that comes to mind is Pope John Paul II.
Yes, they were the same template, really.
Exactly.
On the same template.
You actually mentioned something about the Jesuit priest. He was the first.
Yeah, the Jesuit priest told me jokingly, and I don't know if I said it earlier on before. He said, well, it was the first Jesuit priest or Pope.
Jesuit Pope, yes.
Pope. And he said, the young man said, I hope it's not going to be the last.
Exactly.
You know, because the Jesuits are different.
Yes.
Yeah, they are very liberal. You know, and you could see liberalism in the activities of Pope Francis. He changed a lot of things. You know, he didn't want things to be too difficult for Catholic faithful, you know, and that thing trickled down so much. And of course, if you look at the Jesuit movement, they are like that, really. I mean, Jesuit priests are like that all over the world. You know, they are very liberal, and that is what he brought into the papacy. And I think that's the reason why the young priest said, I hope it's not going to be the last. Okay, I just hope so. I hope so myself.
Well, like I told you, as a game changer, we'll keep you updated. And so this brings when in another part of the world, we are talking about a man who has passed on, and the world is feeling it. In Nigeria here, we've been subjected to killings. People do not have regard for life anymore. The front page of the Guardian newspapers, despair in Benue Plateau as killings hit over 284 in 3 months.
On the fringe of 300 in 3 months.
Yes.
That is terrible. It's terrible for a nation such as ours. And every Nigerian should have a very terrible feeling of sadness at these happenings. It's terrible. I mean, on Good Friday, for instance, about 60 were slaughtered in Benue State. And the governor, incidentally, with a priest, Catholic priest, had to cry out. Okay? We carried it on one of our programs, What's Trending. A lot of responses, actually. But that is not, it's not a mark of meaningful nationhood, okay? When you have people being slaughtered, love or life has ceased to make sense in this country. When people are just killed indiscriminately, all over the place, on farmlands, along the road and all that, there is so much bloodletting. And this is very sad. It's sad and tragic. And I believe that the government must do something urgently about this. I'm happy, though, that a lot of people, eminent statesmen in this country, have talked about it, that there's a need for us to have a change, not just of attitude, a change of military operations, so that I can bring this into a standstill.
I've always talked about the instance of inviting mercenaries. This brings me to the front page of the Daily Sun, where we have Kuka gives damning verdict on insecurity.
Kuka has always done that. Yes. I interviewed him, incidentally. I'm going to play back some of those things one day. I interviewed him In 1996, 1997, that's a long time ago, he was just a priest. In fact, he was in charge of the Catholic Secretariat. They had an outing in Benin and had to corner him to interview. And he said the same thing, I mean, in the military, for instance. And he's been trumpeting this. Okay. Even his own state of Kaduna is not exclusive. Okay. All over the country, in the northeast, in the northwest, is the same problem. In the southwest. So people are saying, what is President Tinubu waiting for? To declare state of emergency
exactly.
in some of these hotspots.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I think it will make sense. Yes, declare state of emergency in some of them. I mean, we cannot just be losing lives on a daily basis. Yes, we cannot. And I'm happy that many statesmen are talking about this already.
Would it be a negative blow to the Nigerian armed forces if we call for international help?
There's nothing stopping us from calling for help. Where it is obvious that there are certain things that we need to be doing that we are not doing. Okay. Although, quite frankly, the military is trying. They're trying their best. They're taking out some of these bandits regularly. But their best seems not to be enough. Because in spite of what they are doing, in spite of the theater operations, we are still losing lives. We are losing lives. Our farmlands have been closed up. Yes. And that has to do with food security. That is why food prices are still going up, tied, of course, to the issue of petrol hike. But if the farmers are at work, then we'll have problems. But the bandits are all over the place. They're in the southwest, for instance. You remember only recently, some traditional rulers were even killed in the southwest, slaughtered. All right. It's been happening all over the place, and I just believe that something drastic ought to be done, and ought to be done very, very urgently. We cannot continue like this. Yeah.
Talking about not continuing like this, the clamor for state police has taken the front burner once again as regards the level of insecurity in the country. This brings us to the front page of the Nation newspaper, where we have Plateau Benue killings. State police back on front burner.
It's a constitutional matter, really, and I think that the lawmakers should do something quickly about this. I mean, how can you have a chief executive of a state, the governor now, not being in charge of security, and yet on paper he is in charge of security, the chief security officer. All right, so there's a little dichotomy there. But I think that powers must be given for state governors to have their own police.
Okay.
But the fear that many people nurse is that these things might be abused. Okay, but I am not. I don't subscribe to that kind of thing. What is right is right. If the Constitution says we should do it, well, we should do it. Okay, the Constitution gives room for state police in as much as the governor is the chief security officer. Okay. All right. I mean, just simple logic. And I believe that if we have state police, things might just simmer down a little bit. I mean, look at the issue of Amotekun in the southwest, for instance. Okay. It could have been worse. But for Amotekun, even though they are not carrying arms, but at least they are able to arrest. I mean, through vigilante processes, they are able to arrest and nip some of these things in the bud. Otherwise, we will have had a worst case scenario in the southwest.
And so, do you think there's going to be a conflict, as in, of interest when it comes to the federal police and the state police?
No. I mean, there are boundaries. I mean, in the U.S., for instance, you have even local government police, county police, state police, then you have the National Police Force. So in this country, it can be done. And in any case, you have one Inspector General of Police, just one. I mean, that is overwhelming for a population of 200 million people. I mean, I've spoken with a lot of retired commissioners of police, and they are saying the same thing, that we need to come down to a level where we will make the job easier for the gentleman in Abuja. Okay, even though he has DIGs and all sorts, all over the place. But if we have state police, that will complement what they are doing. There should be no conflict because there are regulations. So if you flout these regulations, there are penalties to be paid. It's very simple.
Well, like you said, quite a constitutional matter. But then there is still this fear that the governors, who in quotes, who then would, in quotes, be the chief security officers, that they are going to use the state police as should I say, weapons of mass destruction during political...
That would be too hard. They could use it to intimidate.
Exactly.
Political opponents. But, I mean, we can't continue to run away from it. We must liberalize and do things properly. Okay? Nobody taught the governors, some of them, how to steal money. Why must we now teach them how to look after the interests of the people, the security of the people? In any case, the Constitution is there as a guide. You must, a governor is in place, or the government is in place to look after the welfare and the security of the people. These are on the front burner, so you cannot run away from it. In any case, for how long are we going to be running away from it? No, tell me. The welfare is not there, security is not there. Then what is in between?
Serious issues, matters arising. Talking about the welfare of Nigerians, this is not on the front page of the newspapers, and that is exactly why we're bringing it up here on Providence Television International, the issue of power.
It will continue to haunt us. Excuse me. Even as we were talking, we had a program earlier on this morning. The power source went off. And we had to quickly change. It's biting, and it's biting hard. You know, yes. And I don't know for how long we're going to talk about this. Newspaper editorials have spoken about this.
Like they haven't tired of speaking.
Everybody is tired. It's like the more you talk, the worse it becomes. So people are just reticent. Okay. So I don't know. It is again. If we must declare a state of emergency on electricity and food crisis. Yes, these are two major planks that we must talk about as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, still on the power issue, that it was in this nation sometime in 2004 that our grid crashed more than 12 times, making it on the average of once every month.
Well, again, we talked about this. I don't know for how long we'll continue to talk about this, but it seems to me, really, that we've reached the end of our wits, okay? And we've talked about the solutions. Let us continue to encourage the organized private sector to manufacture panels, solar panels, so that many people can take advantage of this, even windmills in the arid areas. What have we not said? Yes, what have we not talked about on this same station as regards the crisis in the electricity sector? Yeah, so, but we'll continue to talk all this.
Exactly.
Continue to talk. Are there other things in the newspapers that
no, for now, nothing. Just like the CEO, Providence Television International, just said, we'll continue to talk. We'll continue to keep you updated. And, as usual, a parting shot from the CEO.
Well, the whole world was united to mourn the passing of a great pope. He was a peacemaker. He was a man of justice, peace, social justice. He believed that governments all over the world must be in place for the poor, for the downtrodden, and for the less privileged. He lived by his precepts, really. He was a friend of the poor, and an amazing man. Yes, but at the same time, we must pray that we'll get a great successor who will replace him and who will carry on from where he stopped. All right. Catholics all over the world will be praying for that at the moment. But it's the whole world, really, because he's the leader of Christendom. All right. So, may the soul of our Pope and the souls of all the faithful departed continue to rest in peace. God bless his soul.
Amen. Well, on this note, I want to say thank you so much for being around there. If you are not there, there will be no Providence Television International. Once again, thanks for watching. Please stay tuned.